Hey nerds, we are going to do our review and breakdown of House of the Dragon, Season 2, Episode 5, starting now. Welcome to the Nerd Social. I am Colin.
And I'm David.
And I'm Paula.
We welcome back Paula from a week off. All of the three of us are back now to review House of the Dragon Season 2, Episode 5. Title of this episode is called Regent. And the spoiler-free logline of this episode is that as the Greens consider how to fill a void on Aegon's council, Daemon tries to persuade the Brackens to bend the knee. David, what is your thoughts on this latest episode of House of the Dragon?
I say it's pretty slow, despite there are some very good points in this episode, because it's more about character development while they deal the aftermath of a beloved character. And also, the Greens, they suffer a somewhat loss of the king, and they're trying to throw this charade that the Greens have claimed victory. But it was much more than that. And now they have to deal with the voids of both the blacks and greens and how they deal with it. They discover the struggles and how to win this war, and they desperate and also lack of resources.
Okay, all right. Paula, what are your thoughts on this latest episode?
I thought it was very slow, a bit boring for me, but I definitely understood that there were some key moments there that was great setup for the next great episode to come.
Yeah, I agree with you, Paul. I think that there was some slowness to the point where I was like, hey, this is dragging a little bit long for me. And I'm like, is this supposed to be this long? And then I paused it and then I waited and I looked at the end of it because I was watching with my girlfriend and it was an hour long. And I was like, wow, this is just so slow. Even though, yes, you're right, there was a lot of setup, there was a lot of good character development. Even I thought, man, this isn't as top-notch as, say, the other previous episodes. Even the slower ones that we've seen in Season 2, this was not as good as I thought it was. I couldn't put my finger on as to why that is, but it just, oh my God, when are we going to get to this point? Or when do we get to that point? And maybe it has to do with the directing, maybe it has to do with the pacing itself. Maybe it was just too drawn out for my taste, but I think that they could have done a little bit more to shorten some of the scenes and to really put some of the setup in some later episodes. But overall, I think it's still pretty average. Having said all that, David, what do you give your rating for this episode?
I give it a 7.
Okay, 7 dinner party. And Paula, what was your rating?
I give it a 6.
Okay, date night. Wow, this is the first 6 in a while for some of us. For me, I think I'll just give it a 7 because definitely the slowness of it really caught up, and I just really think that they could have cut it down just a little bit to maybe the average time, which was like 50 minutes for House of Dragon. This went over an hour, and again, I think it was way too slow. And yes, the end of the episode was really important, but it wasn't a cliffhanger. So maybe a cliffhanger could have helped a little bit to anticipate the episode for next week. Any other thoughts before we get into spoiler territory?
Let's dive in.
Okay. So, if you like what we have to say about House of the Dragon and other content that we put out, please like, share, subscribe for more of this. We really appreciate your support, and we are growing as a channel. So, spoilers ahead. Okay. We first start off with Corlys here. Poor Corlys. His wife had just died from the previous episode. He's lost one of his daughters, and he's just in a very vulnerable space. And we saw him in his castle, very lonely, and just sitting there and just contemplating what has happened. And last week we talked about how he has lost a lot of power, and whether or not, I think Paula, you and I mentioned about this when you were here, about how he is trying to gain power, and because of that power he gambled on it and lost a lot of it along the way. But we did end up seeing later on how his fortunes change a little bit. Whether or not that's a consolation prize, I want to hear from either one of you about whether or not when Rhaenyra handed him the hand roll, was that a consolation prize or was that trying to get him close or some other type of power move that Rhaenyra was trying to do?
I'll jump in this. Basically, yes, they're grieving. Rhaenyra is lost someone who's like a second mother to her, but seeing that, as she mentioned to talking to one of her niece's granddaughters, she said that she meant, and I quote, saying, your grandmother never really cared for me, but what she did is very remarkable, and that I really appreciate everything because Rhaenys made the choice to go out there and defend the queen because she believed Rhaenyra can be the queen. That's something that Rhaenys never done before, or any Targaryen history so far. And so, one of the granddaughters came to her grandfather and gave him the hand of the queen. It wasn't consolation prize. It's like a will left by Rhaenys saying, if anything happens to me, be sure that Corlys has a position with the queen. But the thing is that Corlys is now realizing he does lost a lot. Even his own granddaughter says, yeah, you sailed out at the risk of your own family. Basically, he's confused what he should do because he lost a lot, and yet at the same time, he was presented an opportunity.
Paula, you were frustrated with Corlys when we last reviewed about Corlys as to why was he so cold towards his
granddaughters
being heirs. And in this episode, he actually said to one of his
granddaughters,
would you be an heir? And it was very interesting when her response was that, no, I don't want to be your heir. What was your thoughts on that? Yeah.
Thought that he was grieving. I don't know how genuine that offer was. Or let me just say this. It was definitely genuine.
Okay.
But Rhaenys' death put everything into perspective for him. And that's what happened there. And that's what he told his
granddaughters,
that he will make her heir. And unfortunately for him, she's a dragon rider. And so he's going to have to find another heir.
Right.
But I think that Rhaenyra chose him to be the hand of the queen because he is the closest male person around her that she probably trusts the most. And right now she needs a man standing next to her to really talk to the other members of her council because they're just getting annoying.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Also, we get to Daemon later on. There was this parade that came with Meleys and basically Christian, our favorite character, and Wayne was basically downing him and saying, well, really, it isn't that big of a victory, whereas Christian was saying, it is a big victory. And in the crowd, there were people that were saying it's a bad omen. This character right here, he is Mr. Hammer, and so he actually is going to be very prominent because we saw him in the previous episodes where he was, and for those of you not familiar with Warrior, he was the sergeant in the series Warrior, and he had some prominent roles in the first few episodes, and we were like, what's going on? Why is he being presented like this? So there's a lot of setup to him probably being a dragon rider in the future because he has some Targaryen blood in him. And it'll be very interesting to see where his story arc moves forward in both the end of this season, but also moving forward to season 3. And we'll get to Dragon Riders later on. We see poor Aegon here. A lot of people online was putting this picture and the picture of Viserys almost dead next to each other to see that parallel view between the two. Gravely wounded. They had some really interesting gore at the very beginning where the Grand Maester was trying to reset a bone, which was, that was brutal. And then him getting all these burns. We didn't show it here, but this was a scene later on. What are your thoughts on Aegon? Because there was a very emotional scene right after this scene here where he was trying to speak to Alicent and totally ignored again. So, do you feel bad for him?
I feel bad for him. I do, because he did not want to be king to begin with, and he was just thrown into this, and it's just not something that he wanted. Granted, he does not make the best decisions, but he tends to make them based on his emotions. And really, since he lost his son, he's just been an emotional wreck,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And then when he called out to his mom, "Mummy,"
Oh yeah.
and that I just felt really bad for him at that point.
Mm-hmm. And then Allison just, whatever. Just she's just been very distant. I don't think that she has that type of motherly affection for both of her sons. She's just not a good mother. Seriously.
She does have some emotion to her son, but the
Mm.
problem is she has trouble connecting with them
Mm.
or how to reach out to them. And as Paula pointed out, I feel bad too because he's in serious pain because but the thing is he brought it to himself because as Paula said, he was an emotional wreck and he lost his son and at the same time he's losing power and he let his emotions and his frustration get the best of him and look where he got up
Mm-hmm.
and Allison just ignore him
Mm-hmm.
and then later on we got Allison being ignored herself again as well like karma right there because the small council is struggling how to fill the void and they all believe it's Aemon. Allison says I have more experience and I've done this before.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is that they're in a war right now, not in the time of peace, as the small council said. James confronted Christian Cole saying, "Why didn't you back me up?"
Mm-hmm.
So Christian Cole said what he witnessed at that war, but did not say if he witnessed what happened to Aegon's demise.
This is this part right here. This is right before when Allison's trying to confront Christian to figure out what the heck happened with her son. And go ahead, Paula.
He was asked, he just chose not to answer,
Right.
which shows that he saw exactly what happened. He saw that Egan's may have done it on purpose.
Do you think that he is trying to spare her from more grief here? Because I did question it. I understand what he was saying or what he was trying to do here, but do you think that he was trying to just spare her more pain, or was he just trying to be deliberatively hiding and also trying to take advantage of her?
I think he just said it plainly that this is no longer a war of men. This is now a war of dragon, and we need someone who's a rider to lead us.
Okay.
And I think that makes sense.
Okay.
It's like a white lie, but leads the truth kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because he is sparing her more pain. At the same time, he's trying to save his own ass because once again, he didn't protect the king.
Projecting again.
That's true. And now we bring to the Vale, where Aaron discussed with one of the other daughters of Daemon about war coming to their household.
Rhaena's the one.
They're trying to defend the Queen Rhaenyra, saying that they will grow and they are strong, and I will ride one of them.
Right.
But Aaron doesn't think that she would because she has no experience.
Just to clarify, Lena is her mother. Okay, that was married to Daemon.
Right.
Bela is the one that's with Rhaenyra right now.
Okay.
And then Rhaena is the youngest one who is with Jane Eyre right now and discussing this. So just to clarify for our audience, of all the different names, it does get confusing, and sometimes we would get confused too. Yeah, this is very interesting. This is more, I think, set up for later on as to how Jane Eyre here is going to react, and also how Rhaena is going to react to all these type of machinations going on without her. And we get to the most controversial scene here of the whole episode, where Alyssa Targaryen, which is Viserys's and Daemon's mother, having some fun time with Daemon. And this is all in his head, of course. More of his head games going on. And yeah, I don't know what's going on in his head right now. He got some really messed up dreams. With young Rhaenyra, with the head cut off, he's really messed up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's like in the beginning, Daemon had sex and then married his niece, and now he dreamed about having sex with his own mother.
Some Oedipus stuff going on here, if people are familiar with Oedipus, the Greek mythology. Anywho. So we have Rhaenyra, again, I think you mentioned this a little bit earlier, Paula or David, that she is still trapped in a lot of ways where the council really doesn't respect her. But she's held it long enough because I think it's because she's married to Damon. And they're so freaking scared of him that they're just almost going to fall in line. And I think that when she made that move to try to make Corliss the hand, I think you're right, Paula. They need a counterbalance, and they need someone that has been to war and that has been successful in war to tamp down on some of the bickering in the council itself. So I think she's still making some smart moves here and there. But one thing that I do get frustrated is, do you think that she has been acting too slow, like her father, in a lot of these type of decisions that need to be made, or is her hands tied to the situation?
Keep in mind, she does not have an army.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not much that she can do other than using dragons, which is something that she's been trying to avoid.
Mm-hmm.
They just aren't in the position of strength, and they're still trying to get allies and get people to bend the knees.
And then we see Rhaenyra having struggles with her council, and then we have here Alicent having her struggles with her council here, because all the men in the council are saying, hey, we need a leader, we need a dragon rider. And so it ended up being Aemon being the dragon rider that they were chosen. He becomes the regent. And it's very interesting that the director chose to stay here with Alicent for a minute, just like looking at her dejected and just defeated in a lot of ways. And then maybe realizing that, oh crap, being the leader is not all it's cracked up to be. And maybe I'm messed up in the head because of what Rhaenyra said. And her head is like spinning here. And it was just very interesting to see all of that going on, and then her powers being diminished. What were your thoughts about this?
That was actually my favorite scene in terms of how it was shot, because they muted everything but her breathing to really show how angry she was, upset she was, and uncomfortable. So I thought that was well done. But it didn't even make sense for her to become Queen Regent, because one of the main reasons why they don't want Rhaenyra to rule is because she's a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And now here you are, a woman wanting to be Queen Regent. That weakens your position of war. And it actually made me question, is she also hungry for power? Which is something that I was not thinking before.
I agree with Paula. Aemon is the strongest rider. He is one of the best warriors out there, but he doesn't have the stamina or the patience for a king or a regent to have.
Right.
But they don't listen, because right now, just like Christian Cole says, more is given to the dragon. So they believe that a dragon rider will be the one to lead them, and Alicent obviously is not one.
Right.
And at this whole scene at that council table and having Aemon rise to being King Regent actually made me miss Otto Hightower.
Okay.
And his sense and his reasoning, because I just feel like Aemon is just ruled with power, fire, dragons.
Yeah, and also it was evident later on when the people of King's Landing were not allowed to leave. And they're hungry, they're dying, they have no food. And so he's just, I don't really care. You're not leaving anyway. And it's a very interesting part where I think that's coming into fruition in a lot of ways with his rule as regent. Meanwhile, we have Jace. Jace is making moves of himself, trying to make some alliances with this house here. And doing some negotiation without any type of assurances whatsoever. And he has some intestinal fortitude to really make these assurances without anything to back it up. Do you think that Jace is setting himself up for failure, or do you think that this is a righteous move from a young king to be?
I say he did a right move, because technically he is the heir. And I give him credit. He's one of my favorite characters, actually.
Okay.
that he's taking the right moves while he still thinks about his mother. On Eamon, he doesn't care about his mom. He don't care for himself. Jason is the parallel.
Mm-hmm.
They're both doing to their mothers, but the thing is, one disregards her mother, while this one is doing to help her mom, which I give him credit for that.
Yeah.
He's strategic too, because the Stark's men are marching to that point, so he needs to be sure it's secured.
I think Rhaenyra is being overly protective of Jace, even though Jace is ready in some regards. Jace is inexperienced, but I think that to Rhaenyra's detriment of protecting him, he can't let his wings fly, per se. And I think that he had to go behind her back to show her that I can really do it. It's very interesting if you learn how to drive and your parents aren't very confident with you behind the wheel, and then what happens is that later on you gain confidence driving on your own. Even your parents are concerned, but then later on your parents are like, oh, you're really driving okay, I feel more assured, maybe you can give me a ride here and there. So I think that's like the development of Jace, is that he's just trying on his own, so that maybe later on Rhaenyra can really trust him and rely on him for bigger tasks.
The thing is that Jason does not want to take over the throne. If he wants to have it, he would be given by permission from the mom, unlike Damon. But now we have Melisandre, who's now a confidant slash spy for Rhaenyra,
Mm-hmm.
telling her there are more ways than one to fight a war instead of just dragons.
Right.
You have to know your people and have to like, do the things for you.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike Damon, he did the wrong way, basically, just to strike fear and everything.
Yeah, and so that's very fascinating to see whether or not how her character develops later on. We also see here Helena really questioning Aemon here. Was this whole war worth it? And I'm not sure how Helena's going to come about furthering the storyline, because we've seen her grieve for her son's death. We've seen her almost in a lot of ways saying to Aegon, this place is filthy, and being ignored. And now also saying to Aemon, this is all worth it, and Aemon just basically ignored her as well. Do you see any type of future for her in terms of stepping up and making and really saying, hey, my opinion matters here? Or is she just another Alicent in a lot of ways?
She's in more suffering than Alicent herself, because she's losing her husband and she lost her child right in front of her eyes, and then her own brother is turning against her in some ways, and she's, what am I gonna do? What am I doing here? Even she said herself in the past episode that she wants to get out of the castle with her child. I don't know what part she will play later on, but all I know is that she's stuck because Allison doesn't allow her to leave because she's technically still queen. It's just that her heart's not in it.
I don't think she wants anything to do with this family and everything that comes with the throne. She's the only person in this entire world who is not interested in the throne, who is not playing the games of Throne.
Yeah, exactly. We go back to Daemon here. This was a scene that was earlier where Daemon tried to threaten the Brackens with the dragon, and the Brackens are basically like, yeah, you try to go ahead, kill us, it doesn't really matter. And basically it was a funny scene where Daemon just sat on a rock and said, I just thought that they were going to relent, and they didn't relent. How come? It's almost as though they were using reverse psychology on him, and he's, what just happened? Which I found very amusing. And then later on, while he was waking up, he was in Harrenhal, and then said something about etiquette, and then the Brackens were complaining about how the Blackwoods were engaging in the war in an immoral sense. And Daemon just like, yeah, you guys go figure it out. I want to go back to bed. And he just is a very peculiar character. It's not what he expected, but he also wants to be king, and he also wants to be called king instead of a king consort. So he doesn't know what to do in a lot of ways. He is also very stuck, but stuck in trying to figure out whether or not he can corral these two factions to fight for Team Black, Also, the fact that he wants power for himself, and whether or not he's still loyal to Team Black. And then also his crazy dreams all the time. I just don't know how he's going to be able to resolve this unless he leaves Harrenhal. And I just don't know what's going to happen. Can you guys give me any thoughts as to what do you think is going to happen with him? Because I'm really at a loss right now.
Harrenhal is to him is he's building his own castle and claimed it as his and everything. You know, technically it belongs to Rhaenyra. And even Jace pointed out to the phrase that the phrase wanted Harrenhal. And then the phrase says, what how about the Daemon? And then Jace says, the queen will have him do what she wishes. So basically, let's just say that Daemon somehow rebuilt Harrenhal Castle. But now, after it is rebuilt, he's going to give it to the phrase, and Daemon can't do anything because he's a consort. He doesn't know what to do right now because he always wanted power.
And then we're at the end scene of the episode where I thought it was a letdown here, but no cliffhanger, just like previous episodes, where Jace hatched up a plan saying that, hey, we have some extra dragons here. Why can't we find some dragon riders that are somewhat related to Targaryens, but not really Targaryens, because they really are short-staffed, let's just say. And again, it shows here Jace is really wise beyond his years and thinking of something more outside the box, whereas Rhaenyra is looking through the history, figuring out, oh, what can we do to finagle a army? What can we do to bring out more of a presence? But Jace was the one who was actually more innovative and more trying to think, if we can't do it this way, we have to try another way. What are your thoughts on his ascension here to his mother?
I thought that was really smart. He just really showed that he can lead. He can come up with strategies, right? No,
Yeah.
I think he's like proving himself.
Yeah, Jace is proving himself in his own way. He's not tested or anything. He's not putting orders or anything. Just like Masera says, there are more ways than one to fight for war. And Jace thought another way. Rhaenyra is stuck, even though she thinks that she's trying to avoid using dragons in a war. It may not be working. That she has to put another way. Hence, looking at the books. But Jace says sometimes the books cannot give you the answers unless you're looking for something that can give you a new answer. Hence, the books and the records see what our Targaryen blood offspring is out there. If they are worthy to be fighters.
Right. Yeah, so that's where the episode ended. So, any other thoughts before we wrap up episode 5? Any predictions you might have for the final 4 episodes of season 2?
I'm excited to see the storyline of Viserys' half-brother.
Right.
Yeah, I hope it goes somewhere and they don't just kill him off really soon, because this show is renowned to be doing that.
Exactly. And don't forget about Alan. We saw him in the last episode with Rhaenys. Rhaenys basically acknowledging that he is Corlys' son. So don't forget about him. He might play another role that we haven't seen just yet. And
from the preview of next episode, we get to see if Rhaenyra is worthy to ride on one of the 2 legendary dragons that could compete with Vhagar. This is the Bronze Fury dragon, which is used to belong to her grandfather, Viserys the First, and see if she can be able to ride or connect with him. But see what happens though. But then while the Greens, they still struggling how to, 1, control Aemon, and 2, how to fill in the gap of their losses from the last war at Book's Rest.
That's our thoughts on House of the Dragon, Season 2, Episode 5. We would like to hear what you have to say about this episode and about House of the Dragon overall. Please share, subscribe, and comment down below. And we will see you in the next video. All right, take it easy, everybody.